Welcome to the Trauma Resonance Resilience podcast. My name's Lisa Cherry and I'm going to be your host today. And I have got a treat. If you're into relationships and you do work with young people and children, you are in the right place. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest. They are an education manager of Spartans Community Education, which provides a youth work-led trauma-informed alternative education for primary and secondary children and young people. She has taught English in mainstream secondaries for 23 years, was a literacy development officer for the City of Edinburgh Council, an associate tutor on the Edinburgh University PGDE course, and has published a journal in the Scottish Affairs Journal on adverse childhood experiences, talking about building the bridge of trust with young people. She's a mum of 3, loves reading, creative writing, and cold water swimming. Her proudest achievement is being described as the last wasp at the barbecue for the tenacious way she fights for the best interests of young people. Welcome, Emma Easton.
Hello. Hi, Lisa. Good to be here.
Hello. It's so lovely to have you here. And of course, you're here because you are passionate about my favourite subject, really, which is relationships, working with young people and children, and also really working with children and young people for whom mainstream education has become too challenging and just hasn't been able to meet their needs. And I think a good place to start with that, I really like this idea of building the bridges. So tell me a little bit about building the bridges. What does that mean for you?
I mean, it's across the whole of Spartans Community Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Spartans Football Club, where this image, this metaphor, this idea is part of our DNA. You know, it's there and it was established long before I started there. And this building the bridge of trust is that we go on this journey with the children, young people, or adults or families who we support. And we understand that we can't work with them. We can't move anything forward if we don't establish that trust first. But we also accept it's not a fast process. It's going to, you know, I suppose that's where the building part comes from. It's not going to happen overnight. And sometimes you have to really hang in there a long time to build that trust. But I think across every part of what we do, whether it's education, youth work in schools, education work in schools or out of schools, we're always looking to build that trust and that relationship with the children, with the young people, with the partners, with the schools. And I think we just say everything we do is grounded in relationships.
So where does that come from? I mean, if you're really tenacious and you're really passionate and this is something you really want to do, what's your story? Where does that come from?
In me personally, I mean, I'm so lucky because it comes, from a happy family.
It's okay. You know, I mean, that's the thing about this work is it just touches every aspect of our soul.
Yeah, I think I just realized how lucky I am to have had the role models I had. So my desire to connect with people and help others comes from my own experience. And I think there are times when you work in this field and you kind of look at, I know we all have lived experience, but those who are held up as lived experience mentors, and I don't mean held up like they shouldn't be, you know, are really, really vital to the process, but you can feel a bit of an imposter when you're coming in going, I have no adversity. Obviously, we all do. Obviously, everybody has different challenges they've faced in life. But if you were to look at the biographical background, you know, there's very, very minimal adversity there. But something in the way I was parented allows me to want to connect with people. And yeah, I think in my own family life, who sometimes get the shortest, thinnest edge of my wedge of what's left after I've given a lot to other people. But yeah, I think it's just that is just in everything. So it's just in me. I don't have to, I'm not saying I haven't worked at things and learned and adapted my practice over the years in many considerable ways, but I've landed in the right place eventually and then it's so funny because I was watching a few webinars and things to prepare, and you've done a lot of work around what we bring to work ourselves as people, and that kind of how much of ourselves do we bring to work and where are our professional boundaries and everything. But I always say at Spartans, it's where I finally landed. I get to be the most authentic version of myself. And that I'm really grateful for, because when I look back at my practice as a classroom teacher, I think I did a good job. I was successful. I could get promotions if I wanted them at times in my life. But now I know, looking back, I wasn't authentically myself at work. But when you're holding 30 children safe in a classroom and putting forward that professional self, you maybe can't be. I don't know. It's just be interesting. And I can't go back in time to know what would it be like to be a teacher now. But I get the privilege to work really closely in the sort of one-to-one small group settings now. And I get the privilege and the honor to know, sadly, quite a lot of intricate details about young people's lives that I didn't know when I was teaching 30 at once. And I think that gives you an insight that so yeah, I rock up authentically as myself. It suits me. I wear my heart on my sleeve, as you have seen that. But I'm comfortable with that.
You've brought so much beautiful richness into the room without probably meaning to. And I guess the first thing I would say is I often say to people, we're motivated by what happened to us, whether that was all the things that went right or all the things that went wrong. These are the things that guide us and that drive us and that want us to bring that into our work. And it might be that, as you've just described, and I think lots of people don't talk about this, what is it like to show up when you don't have that lived experience? In a way, having lived experience of exclusion or trauma or adversity or being known to a social worker or all of those things, in a way, being able to show up with that brings a kind of with it, doesn't it? But actually showing up and just going, because things were so good for me, I'm able to bring that love and that experience into this room. It doesn't seem to generate the same about it, does it? And I really felt that when you were sharing that actually this is something that we don't talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an awkward conversation. There's no and I read about it in Darren McGarvey's first book about Poverty Safari and how he reflected on, I think it was an arts practitioner who was very, very middle class, and he really resisted her. But then later when he reflected, he'd understood that she could offer something to the table that was different, a different perspective. I mean, I just think I'm gonna be honest, I'm not always the best listener. I mean, people at work will watch this, so there's no point in me lying to anybody. I'd love to say I do think listening is the key. I'm not always the best listener. I think being an empath, I just am. I don't think I knew that word earlier in my life, but I think being an empath means that you can tune in. And I'm a writer, I'm a creative writer. I do that in my spare time. I'm an English teacher. So I've got a highly vivid imagination. And then I sometimes don't need a vivid imagination because I'm in a home seeing the desperate state of affairs right in front of my eyes. I don't need to imagine it. It's there. And it's whether I can stay regulated and grounded enough to be a useful ally to that family or that young person. And that's probably what I offer.
Yeah,
not all the time, but I'd work hard on that. I would try to be that person that can go alongside them and yeah, offer something, whatever it is I offer.
And that's not different whether you're bringing in lived experience or you're bringing in, you know, the relational privilege, because I think that's what you're talking about, isn't it? You had relational privilege rather than relational poverty. You know, you had those people around you where you were having those very attuned attachment relationships that taught you what that looks like. And of course, bringing that into your work's a valuable thing. I mean, just like, of course it is. You know, I guess where it wouldn't be appropriate is if it's not against the backdrop of understanding the impact of adversity and trauma.
Yeah.
And that's going to be perhaps the difference between Emma in mainstream and Emma in alternative. I don't know. You tell me. When we're thinking about authenticity, because that's what you were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah, I think and it is, you know, there's something about mainstream you've got now. You always say you've got to manage this quantity of people, whether it's 30 in a room or whether it's 300 in an assembly hall or 500 in a corridor or 1,200, you know, these big mainstream schools. There's these numbers game that the adults sometimes have to speak in louder, more projected voices or have to use scripts. You know, I mean, I work on the PGDE course and I go and support students who are learning to adopt this role as a PGDE training teacher. And I say, you will speak to a room full of teenagers in a tone and voice and, you know, choice of words that you don't use anywhere else in your life. And you might be, you know, you might be the quickest, wittiest comedian ever, but you've got to hold their attention and you've got to give an authoritative stance. You know, you don't have to be, you know, lecturing or didactic in the way you teach, but you've got to convey, I'm going to keep you all safe in this room and we've got boundaries and we're going to succeed and we're all this together. But when you're helping young teachers adopt that tone they've never used before, some of them find it really alien and really strange. And I think when you do that day in, day out, 5-6 periods a day with classes coming in front of you, I don't know, it just, to me, I mean, I didn't know it was becoming inauthentic or artificial till I came to be able to just, and I think what we have at Spartans, I mean, you've done loads of work on belonging. So people will come and they'll visit the alternative school and they'll say, and I always, you have to be very careful the number of visitors you can have, but where possible and where appropriate, I say to people, come and feel it. You have to feel the dynamic that we're offering. And then when they imagine what they're coming to, and always when they walk away, they go, oh, it didn't feel like I imagined it would. It felt like a family. It felt nurturing. It felt supportive, all the things we want it to be. And James Doherty, who you may have come across through the ACE Aware Nation work, he came and spoke to our students. He said, you know, you're providing that, I don't know what the word he used, but that kind of microcosm of a family experience in a safe way. So you've got, you know, I can name people, you know, Uncle Kenny, Grandad Paul, Auntie Emma, older big cousin Chris, you know, all these different roles that we're playing. He said you're offering that in a safe, supportive way. And a massive thing is the absence of male role models for our students, especially our young men, unfortunately. So I think the youth workers that we work with are really valuable in that respect. But when I came to work there, not only does Spartans Foundation as a place feel, you talk about the Spartans family, but it's not just you talk about it, you feel it when you work there. You feel it when you're at a training day. You feel it when you're in a meeting. You feel it when you make a mistake and you've got to go and speak to the boss and say, I've made a mistake. And you feel it, hopefully, when the young people tell us they feel it. One of them made a poster for our charity dinner film and held up a poster that said, it's our second home. You know, and if the young people can hold up a poster saying that they made off their own bat, we're doing something right.
That's lovely. What's PGDE? Because I know people will be going, what's
Postgraduate diploma in education. It's the 1 year. I think you call it PGCE, don't you?
We do. And
The
when I
same
was
thing.
reading out your bio, I kind of
And
thought,
then I'm
I wonder
thinking
if
maybe
that's-
I'm wrong. Maybe it is CE up here now, but it's the 1 year teacher training you do after having gone to university first.
Fantastic. So tell me then, because I'm really passionate about belonging and you're describing that people feel that, how do you cultivate belonging in your setting?
It's very multi-layered, obviously. I think strangely, I don't know if it is strange, but it is a very beautifully maintained setting. So it's very aesthetically, beautifully attractive place to be. And it's incredibly clean and it's incredibly well maintained. And thought and care goes into, and not everything can be, you know, top end and expensive, but it's very carefully thought of the aesthetic of what it looks like. So it's welcoming, safe, and so there's a pride in the location, which I think the young people and visitors, I mean, obviously we work with adults as well, people with disabilities come and play football, or elderly groups do walking football, or there's a women's group still
But
kicking.
let me pull that out then. We've got environment and we've got welcoming and we've got safe to start us off with. Okay, carry on.
So yeah, so there's this welcome environment that people take pride in. I think they recruit the right people who have a smile on their face. Funnily enough, that does seem to do the trick. And I go around lots and lots of schools, and I have worked in lots and lots of schools where you are not always met with a smile at the reception. You have amazing receptionists, of course you do. But the welcoming smile,
which I talk about all the time. And it seems like stating the obvious. But as you say, I've also been in hundreds upon hundreds of education settings. And if you don't have that smile, or sometimes you have the smile, but there is a screen with posters on it, so you can't see the person behind the screen. So already it doesn't matter how welcoming and how connecting and how attuned and how smiley the person is, you can't see them. So that's the other thing. So we've had environment, welcoming, safety, and we've had that smile, that all-important smile. Okay.
Yeah, recruiting the right people. I think our former CEO talked about gathering people rather than recruiting, and I think that's a lovely image as well. But I think they attract good quality people, but they know how to bring the best out in people. And I think so the belonging comes from the sense that many of the staff team are gathered or come from the community or have been previous. Now, I listened to a huge long debate yesterday on what word we use, and about all these debates about don't use the word service user. And so all the people who may have accessed what Spartans offered in the past can often find ways into employment at Spartans. So the people will see, visitors or people arriving will see that kind of local authenticity within the staff team. I think they'll see diversity. I think they'll see I think people that are very proud of where they work. And a lot of people do talk about the blue coat. And Spartan staff will tell you that when we walk about or drive about or are in the community, you get a wave and a toot and a acknowledgement when you're wearing this that comes across all sectors, all ages. People you might not expect to give you a wave, a nod, a smile. We're kind of known for this. So there's something in the uniform which is worn by everybody, you know, office-based or not.
I would say there's something in the identity. There's an identity which supports that sense of belonging. So that's really interesting as well.
You talked to Dr. Karen Treisman about if the walls could talk. And we did, I mean, it can sound a bit airy-fairy, but we did a cultural footprint mapping exercise last year, and the company that provided that service said that we were among one of the highest, most aligned organizations from what we profess that our values and our principles are, and what staff anonymously filled in a survey that they actually feel. So it's like we walk the walk, we walk the walk, we walk the talk. It's not just lip service. It's not just policies on a wall or in a document. And we talk a lot about our DNA and things that are in our DNA. And I think language is really important. And I think that comes from the top. And it's always been something that I suppose was drip fed into me. And they like to say they deinstitutionalize me from 23 years of mainstream teaching. And I still go in and out of schools. I'm still really close to lots and lots of professionals in schools. We work with schools. So we're right, you're wrong. But there is a funny creative playing with this deinstitutionalizing me and making what I have learned to allow me to feel I belong at Spartans is that when we teach lessons in school on growth mindset, and we give lip service to it, and we say, oh, we hold this up and Carol Dweck and blah, 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 and specific praise. But when you work at Spartans, you actually experience growth mindset being lived and breathed. And you are actually encouraged to take risks and to make mistakes. And then as long as you can talk through your thought process that led to that mistake and take accountability and unpick it with win, learn, change, then you will always feel respected and valued, and that you therefore dare to make a mistake. That when I worked for the council, there can be a lot of back covering, a lot of ticking boxes, a lot of making sure there's evidence trails, which might not be the right thing to have done or the most innovative thing to have done, but you're safe. And I think, and that's another word, that's me being ironic with the word safe, but I think there's something in that as well.
There's definitely.
You can help me summarize that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the difference. I'm just writing about this at the moment. It's the difference between management and leadership, isn't it? Leadership is modeling that we make mistakes, and that actually making mistakes is crucial to our growth. It's vital, it's important. We have to make them. We want to make them. It's a good thing. And that's very different from management, which is where there's a lot of criticism about making mistakes. There's no room for mistakes. We don't have space for mistakes. And also holding that against actually risk adversity. What kind of mistakes can we make? And what sort of mistakes are actually going to have really quite serious implications for somebody? So it's quite a complex area when we start thinking about how do we create an environment that's safe for making mistakes and also is held in such a way that those are not going to impact people adversely who are already dealing with enough adversity.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I know it goes without saying, but like our health and safety policies, our child protection, those kind of areas are robust, thorough, and, not up for debate. I think I'm talking more about creative innovation in youth work and education. And I suppose that creative thinking that is encouraged and nurtured there.
Well, creative thinking and that ability to be very expansive is certainly something that I love, and something that we do very much at TICS, trauma-informed consultancy services, because I mean sometimes I joke that we're on the WhatsApp group on a Friday evening and someone will have an idea. And it's like, we're all supposed to be resting, but someone's had an idea and someone else goes, yeah, I love that idea. That's really exciting. And it's having that space to do that, isn't it? And to feel that that's okay. I mean, I think we've really given some key pointers on belonging, on relationships, on leadership, on authenticity in a really quite short space of time. So I guess if we were going to come to a close, what would you say to anyone who is thinking about working in an alternative provision?
I think you have to accept you're going to need a lot of emotional energy. And you have to decide what you personally have to give and how much you're willing to give in that respect. And then maybe when I flip to my original conversation about mainstream teaching, I'm sure, you know, it is that there was perhaps more boundaries around my emotional energy back then, because you can't give and connect with 30 all at once all the time. It just would not be humanly possible. So I think you've got to have emotional energy. I hate the word resilience, but that would be a whole nother podcast conversation. But I think you've got to have a resilience within you to be able to bounce back, because you're going to have to not take personally what will feel like hugely personal insult, jibes, very, very quick-witted, streetwise, nasty comments, because they're often, you know, you've got to see past that behavior and see what that behavior what is that behavior communicating. So you're going to have to be curious. You're going to have to be playful, because if you lose your sense of fun and your sense of energy and fun and playfulness, you're going to lose these children, because that's the only way we can, not the only way, but one of the best ways to encourage them to learn, through play. Curiosity, playfulness. I think it's vital that people understand neurodiversity. I think it's vital that people are fully, properly trained in neurodiversity, particularly in girls and women, which is still so poorly understood. Because I think so many children that fall into that system, I know in England you have your PRUs, which we don't have in Scotland,
That's
are neurodiverse.
Referral unit for anyone listening, yeah.
But you know, the links to neurodiversity there, and the inability of schools to meet their needs is huge. You're obviously going to have to understand about trauma, about attachment, about adverse childhood experiences. And you can learn a lot as you go along. You don't have to know everything on day one, but I think it's being open and then being curious to understand and to learn deeper as you go along is the most important part.
And I know I was going to close this, but you've just raised something of interest to me, which is neurodivergence in women and girls. And what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of neurodivergence?
Well, in simple terms, it would be women and girls' ability to mask. And they can be highly, highly skilled at that. And I think that when they are, unless, you know, the closed doors of the family home is when the mask comes off. And I think that even CAMHS professionals, doctors and whatever, will always see a masked version. So that's what needs to be understood.
Yeah. And I can see that I've touched on something personal there. So I won't press on that, but maybe another time it would be so good to talk about.
No, it's really important. And I think it's what motivates me to speak about it.
Yeah. Yeah. We may well share the same experience there, but maybe another time we could talk about that, because I think it is hugely misunderstood and by everybody, because it's so easy to miss.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. It's so easy to miss. And when we miss something, especially people like us that are very ingrained in the work, if we miss something much more closer to home, then inevitably that's going to evoke particular feelings and difficult feelings that are around parenting. But yeah, that's for another day. But listen,
no, Emma, it's a fascinating field and it does need to be better understood. And I think, and even supporting parents to understand, you know, that I can have that shoe on that foot as well. And it's difficult because I think society just hasn't quite caught up yet with this, and it will.
Yeah, and that's complex as well, because, and again, here's a whole other series of podcasts, you know, but there's notions about what it is to be a woman or a girl. And I think that's what makes this really difficult as well, because you know, it's embedded and ingrained in notions of femininity and notions of how women show up. And there's a whole range of different disorders that women have had to endure for years and years and years. So, yeah, but listen, Emma, it's been so good to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for unpicking, you know, some of the things around belonging and relationships. And I know that people listening will really, really value that. So thank you.
Great. No, I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.